Hello and welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip of Wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, former NWA Florida Tag Team Champion, former WCW Superstar. You may know him as Alan Iron Eagle. We know him as the Desperado, Joe Gomez. Joe, welcome to the Two-Man Power Trip. How you doing?
It's great to be here, John. Thanks for having me on your show.
Awesome to see you. What have you been up to?
Well, I'm here in Tampa, Florida. I'm actually on the back porch. Uh, my daughter's in the office using the computer to do her homework, my little 12-year-old. So I've got a 12-year-old daughter, beautiful little girl named Presley. Um, Several businesses here in the Bay Area, in Tampa that's keeping me busy. And we have a funding company called Florida Settlement Funding, pizza parlor called Palazzo Pizza. A lot of the boys have been by. And rental properties. We're doing development down here. So just keep it really busy, and seeing a lot of my wrestling friends. Actually, this weekend, Rick and I are going to go see Mongo, unfortunately, in Chicago. He's in the hospital again. So we're going to go see him. He's been stricken with ALS, and it's absolutely terrible. So we're going to go try and raise some money up there for him. I think Eric Bischoff's coming, some of the other guys, and try to do some good for Mongo and his family.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely terrible what's going on with him. The ALS, just, oh, that is the worst. And it's crazy to think of him, you know what I mean? Like huge Mongo, tough Mongo, the NFL almost Hall of Fame Mongo in that
Yeah.
kind of shape and that condition is crazy.
Yeah, John, I'm going to add Mongo, who beat the living hell out of me in '96 at Bash at the Beach. But
Yes,
truly a
yes.
great
July
guy and a
7th,
great friend.
yes. July 7th, 96. Yeah, he beat the hell out of you. Yeah.
Oof. Still got memories of that. But yeah, he's a dear friend. And it's probably the worst thing you can ever imagine, just seeing him now and, seeing him helpless like that. But he's got a strong family around him and a lot of his friends. And it's amazing where the whole city of Chicago, the Bears ownership, the McCaskey family, the firemen, the police, really everybody in the city has rallied around him to help him out. He's that beloved of a character there.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny, like you mentioned Bash to the Beach 96, him stiffing you a little bit. Was he just maybe a little too stiff in the ring? Was he just kind of, was he just using his football,
No,
strength and
you know
killing
what it
everybody?
is? We always, rib each other about that. But no, you know what it is? He's just so strong. You're talking about legit. I want to say he was a 500-pound bencher in his heyday. And like you said, borderline legitimate Hall of Famer in the NFL, 140, 136 sacks. Part of the greatest probably defense in the history of football.
Yep.
And just one big tough Texan. So, if you're trying to move him around the ring and he doesn't want to go, he ain't going to go. So, yeah, it was a pretty stiff one. But, like I said, he's a dear friend. And we had a couple other matches leading up to that as well. And I'll always remember it and had a great time. And I was just happy to be there on such a history making night.
How did you just get into WCW to begin with? Because I remember in the early 90s, you were there, obviously after Florida Championship Wrestling or
Yes.
NWA Florida, whatever you call it. But you were Alan Iron Eagle. So you were like an Indian character. And you know what I mean? How did that happen? Because I guess that's really the Jim Herd era.
Yeah, well, actually, Ole Anderson hired me. And for some reason, Ole liked me. He was down scouting for talent in Florida. Mike Graham and I were Florida Tag Team Champions. And I had 17 matches under my belt. And I was literally green as, you know what they say. And, but I had a certain look. I was a young, I guess good looking kid and, 6'3" in shape, 240, 235. And they were looking for young talent. And WCW at that time in '90 was going through a real rough phase, as you know. The house shows were horrible. The leadership was really spotty. At this point, Ole was the booker who had taken over from Dusty, and then Dusty subsequently took over for Ole again in, I believe, '91 when I was there. And they just hired me. They said, "Kid, they gave me $1,000 a week," and and I remember calling Steve Kern, my trainer from the office, and said, "Should I sign? I don't think I'm ready." I had 17 matches under my belt. He goes, "Heck yeah, you should sign. You never know if you get another opportunity again." So I signed, went on the road, and got matched with the Master Blasters for the first 90 or 60 days, I think, on the road, which was Kevin Nash, who's still a friend, and Al Green, rest his soul, who's no longer with us. and that was pretty stiff. Then I went from them to the Nasty Boys, and
Oh God.
it was
Yeah.
it was a good education. But I had a lot of fun there. I remember my parents gave me a gold AMX card and said, "All right, put all your expenses on here for the accountant and for your taxes." And I was making 52,000, which was great for a young kid. But Rick and Arn took me under their wing, and I traveled with the Horsemen that year, and I ended up spending like I think $74,000 my first year in the business. Oh, it was horrible.
Wow.
They understand. But I'm with the Horsemen, Mom. It was just your dreams come true, if you can imagine. So, and to this day, we're all still really, really, really close friends.
With that though, why are you Alan Iron Eagle? Like, why are you an Indian character? Where did that come
A
from?
funny story about that, because I truly am Native American.
Oh, okay.
Adopted, hence the surname Gomez. I was adopted by two lovely Cuban Spanish parents who have been gone a long time. But I could not have been a luckier man. And I thank God every day for that, for those people that adopted me and the friends that I've been fortunate enough to make through the years. And now my daughter, which is my only family. But it was kind of a rib on Oli, because, his name is Alan. Alan, I'm not pronouncing it right. I know Rajewitz. So Alan Iron Eagle, because Oli loved me. For some reason, he just liked this green kid who really had no business being in WCW at that time. And I'll be the first to say it. But I had potential. I had athletic ability, no question. But I just wasn't polished enough. So he really liked me. And I guess there's a rib on him. The booking committee came up with Alan Iron Eagle, and they said I was a 19-year-old Indian from Netawaka, Kansas. And it actually got over a little bit, because I was tagging with guys like Tom Zink, Brian Pillman, God rest both their souls, the Rock and Roll Express, so they were putting me with a lot of those guys to try to get the rub for me. And, but back then the house show business was horrible. It was, WCW Saturday night. There was no direction with the TV and anything. And, subsequently, like 3 years later, was when Eric came aboard, 94. But the 90-91 was really, really tough business for WCW.
What do you think about Jim Hurd, the pizza guy, Mr. Pizza? What do you think about
He
Jim?
was real tough. He's the guy that wanted Ric Flair, as Kevin Sullivan said, because I would always be with Kevin and Rick and Arn, the booking committee, on the booking committee, and Kevin would say, yeah, because he Hurd wanted Rick to cut his hair like Spartacus, cut his hair short, and he was going to be named Spartacus, which prompted Rick to leave and go to WWE, WWF, I'm sorry, at the time. And Kevin Sullivan said, yeah, and why don't you just change Mickey Mantle's number? So Hurd was, he was a Pizza Hut executive. I'm sure he was a really smart man in that realm, but he really wasn't suited for wrestling. A lot of his decisions were really unpopular. He came up with the idea of two guys that were hunchbacks. They couldn't get pinned because they had hunchbacks. This is real, by the way. And they were actual real hunchbacks, and they couldn't be pinned. It never came to fruition, but those were some of his ideas, having Rick cut his hair and be Spartacus. And so that was really met with a lot of derision from the boys, and it wasn't a real popular time at all.
Yeah, I mean, the Ding Dong, Spartacus. I mean,
Ding Dogs, yes.
Yeah, he had some bad ideas. Yeah.
Oh, horrible. And yeah, it was real bad. It was a real bad time there. So subsequently, after my contract was up, and I wasn't ready for it. There was no way I was prepared at that time. And I was, that first year running around with the Horsemen. So I really wasn't spending a lot of time practicing like I should have. But I had a great time, made a lot of dear friends, and unfortunately, I had a death in the family. It was my mother. So I came home to be back here in Tampa with my dad, because that was all each of us had. And so it was good. My dad and I had a few good years together, 4 good years. He helped me open up my first business, which was a bar called Cherries in Ybor City. That was pretty infamous with all the boys, both WWE or WWF at the time, and WCW, with the localized promos. Flair would say, I'm going to be in Ybor City after the show, and come on down to Cherries. So, we'd have the best parties there. And Ybor City is a historic district of Tampa. It was going through just this tremendous resurgence. And so I was fortunate enough to, be in on that and open this restaurant called Cherries. We had a 20-year run there, and subsequently opened up another one called Sushi on 7th, and a couple more after that. And, that business has always been good for me. But then after my dad died in '95, I was just here alone in Tampa, and Rick and Arn had stayed close with me, and actually I spent 3 or 4 Christmases with them and their families after my parents died. And they were, oh, Chief, you're coming here for a week, and Rick would have me at his home for a week. Arn would have me at his home, and I can't tell you what that meant to a 24-year-old guy who was pretty much heartbroken when his idols, heroes, took me under their wing, welcomed me in their home as family. And that was really, really special for me. But they said, Chief, why don't you come back and, come to work here in WCW? And I said, yeah, give it a shot. And Eric had me come in for a tryout at, I did a match at Disney back when we were doing the week long or 10 days at Disney.
Yep.
And he signed me. But at first I was going to do another take off on a Native American character. They actually hired a private detective to see if I was, because God, John, you're so good with this. Charlie Norris.
Charlie Norris. Yep.
He had sued WCW like the year before I came back and hit him for like $300K, $350 for when they discrimination.
Yeah, discrimination lawsuit. Yep.
Yeah, and he actually hit him pretty good. It might have been half, I'm not sure, but it was a pretty fair number. So they didn't really anticipate me doing that, but they wanted to make sure that if they were indeed going to push an Indian, he really was an Indian. So the good thing about that was I got to meet my biological mother in West Palm Beach, which was a trip. That's a whole other story. And so they came up with Desperado. I think that was Jimmy Hart's idea. Desperado Joe Gomez.
Love that.
So we kind of worked on that, and it was hard. I tagged up with Renegade and a lot of the guys, Disco, myself, who Disco was a tremendous talent, by the way, both mind for the business and work rate. But a lot of the guys, there was that glass ceiling there because there were so many guys there. There was Macho, the Steiners, and Hulkster, and Nate, and the Horsemen, and so it was really hard if you were a young guy to kind of break through that ceiling during that time period. And obviously the formula worked because Eric, broke business records with WCW, but I don't think it worked for the long term because there wasn't a lot of, aside from Goldberg, young talent that was developed, new talent. But yeah, just to be there in that time, when we were number one and riding high, and those were heady times, and everybody was really, really positive. It was an 83-week period where we beat WWE and WWF at the time. And so it was a great time to be there, without question. It was crazy just to see the crowds. It was like, it was like traveling with Bon Jovi in their heyday, just in terms of the crowds that would come out there. And we do a lot of college campuses, which was really smart. Zane was the event coordinator, and he would book us at a lot of the bigger colleges. So we'd get 25,000, 30,000 really worked up kids there. And it was tremendous for business.
Zane Bresloff, yeah, he's great. Did a great job with a lot of your venues and stuff.
Another guy gone too young. Yeah, yep. Zane was a good guy.
With that, like as far as Desperado, the gimmick, is it literally you're just Desperado Joe Gomez, Jimmy Hart saw the movie Desperado with Antonio Banderas, and that's the character?
Yeah, I think so. I'm very humble, but they would always say, kid, you're a good-looking kid. We want to do this with you, this with you. And subsequently, they did a little. It didn't last too long with myself, Jim Powers, Renegade, another good friend gone far too young, and Alex Wright. And I can't recall the name that they put us, but it was just, some of the young guys. It was just an idea thrown out there by Jimmy to try to, maybe get us closer to breaking the glass, just try to get some of the guys over, a little rub, whatever you could. And Jimmy was always great with that, working with the underneath talent, because he did the music, of course, and he was always coming up with ideas for us. And I'll always appreciate that for him. And, to this day, darling, I tell you, I told you, we could have made you a star, and he's always just so complimentary and just such a positive person. Jimmy's always will be a very, very, very dear friend. And I appreciate everything he tried to do for me. Believe me, there was plenty of guys, that tried to help me out. And, for whatever reason, I think a lot of it I have to blame myself because I was pulled in. Eric said this. He and I did a panel not too long ago, and I had my hands in a lot of fires. But Eric was paying me good money to be a professional wrestler. But like he said, if you own a business, you live that business. You eat, you breathe. Because that business is it's yours. You gave birth to it, and especially the bar restaurant business, it's really tough. A lot of hours, and if you can't be there, you're always worrying about it. And I think I probably bit off a little more than I could chew if I was going to try to be a star for WCW.
Do you like the movie Desperado? Did you see the movie? Like, did you
I
kind of
did,
resonate with the
yeah,
character?
yeah. And I was trying to think of ideas, and I wish I was as creative then as I am now. Maybe come out with a guitar case like him, maybe shoot smoke in the crowd or something like kind of like Johnny B. Bad. I don't know, but yeah. And I had the tights made like him with I believe they're called the Paulettes or the bangles, that hung off there, and the boots
Yep.
with it. But it was a tough character for me to try to really, because he had the guns and all that, and I don't play the guitar, which I wish I did. So it was kind of tough for me to carry over into the character. I see maybe some of the physical resemblance, when I was younger,
Hmm.
perhaps. But yeah, that was all Jimmy's idea, and he did some videos on it, and it was well received. But I'm going to be the first one to say, I was told Eric, I kind of felt I let him down because I didn't progress as a worker the way I could, should, or perhaps would have had I been doing that solely. A lot of times I'd be in the power plant going through my paces, and the devil, Kevin, would call him, "Your man's come down here, pick us up at the CNN tent." I'd have to go on the road with those guys. And while it's great that we were all really close and, friends, but I just didn't put 110% into the business, that I probably should have. No, that I definitely should have. And, having, a tanning salon or a sushi restaurant, a big 5,000 square foot sushi restaurant in Ybor City, while I had cherries. And, these were big $1 million deals. And, it kind of takes its toll on you, in other words. You're trying to travel around and concentrate on this and this and this, but you're getting reports, you're talking to your management. And, it's tough. It's definitely tough.
Yeah, you had your business life, and then you had your wrestling life, and they're kind of, it's going two ways at the same time.
Yeah, John, if I could have done it over again, realizing just how fortunate I was in both ways. A lot of people never own their own businesses. I thank God for that every day. But to be able to break into that business, and I was just so fortunate, and to have, my idols literally welcome me and, become friends with them and be able to travel the world with them. If I could do it over again, yeah, I probably would have figured out a way to divest myself from some of my other businesses and, just solely concentrate on wrestling. Eric paid me good money. I apologized to him because I felt bad about it. He goes, "No, Joe," and he couldn't be greater about it. I've actually got to be pretty good friends with Eric. I'll see him this weekend in Chicago, and I look forward to it. Um, if anything, he paid me good money. It's up to me to progress and, you know, maybe train a little more and do this and do the things necessary to become top star. God knows I had examples all around me from Double A to Stinger to Luger to Flair, that I was tight with. But, that's on me.
It's funny, like, we think about it. Bischoff actually used the theme from, or a theme from Desperado. There's a great scene where he comes around the corner and around the bend, and he's going to get the guns ready, and
Mm-hmm.
that's Eric Bischoff's theme. I don't know if you knew that or remember that at all, but for some reason
No, I
he
didn't,
uses
John.
a song from Desperado. That's his, that awesome theme song is from Desperado.
I remember this. I did not know that. I'm gonna mention that to him this weekend when I see him. That's great. Yeah, no, Eric,
Could have
listen,
been yours.
John, and not being full of myself, but he would tell me, he goes, "Kid, can't you just get abs? You got $1 million look." And I'm like, oh God, I remember Scott Hall just torture me and Kevin trying to help me with, oh, kid, just cut out the carbs. And yeah, I've got great memories of the time without a doubt. But, I think everything works out the way it's supposed to, you know, um, in the grand scheme of things, I guess. I can't complain. I've been truly blessed. I've got unbelievable friends. I've got a daughter that, you know, I've learned what real love is, beautiful 12-year-old girl. She's such a good kid. And, I've got friends that I'm blessed to have. So my years in the business enabled me to just do things I never dreamed that I would do, and I'm very thankful for it, truly.
What was it like hanging out with Flair and Arn? I know we're like talking about you partying with them, but like, what is that really like? Is it really 3 a.m. in the morning, him handing out Rolex watches? I mean, what is it like hanging out with those two and
In the
partying?
day, John, yeah, he is, everything is advertised, and that's why he is an icon, because he lived his gimmick 24/7, and he still is. John, he's here. Rick and I are best friends. He's here in Tampa. He moved here to Tampa a year ago.
Wow.
So ostensibly, he came to find a boat in Sarasota. So he calls me, "Oh, Joe, I'm going to come down." It was Labor Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day. I'm going to come down. We're going to get a boat. So I took him to my marina where I buy my boats in Sarasota. Introduced him to guys. Great. He finds a boat, 38-foot Donzi. Loves it. Okay, we're great. We're staying in Sarasota and having a great time. Joe, everybody's too old here. I'm like, what are you talking about, Rick? You're 72. Oh, no. We got to go back to Tampa. So we go to Tampa. He checks into the Marriott Waterside, stays there for 5 months until I finally convince him, Rick, rent a place. You have no idea how much you're spending here at the Marriott. And he would leave for, 3 days and not check out of the room. Oh, no, it's fine. Just leave it here. I'm just like pulling my hair out. So he's got a beautiful, beautiful penthouse there at one of the buildings right there in Channelside. And I'm actually going to see him tomorrow down there at the place called The Battery, a really great bar restaurant down there. Tremendous. And so he's incredibly happy. He and Fifi go kind of back and forth. Wendy, his wife,
Yep.
they go back and forth. She's up at Rosemary Beach, which is truly where they got married, which is truly one of the most beautiful beaches in the state of Florida. And he's down here, and he's got his 38-foot Donzi with 350 horsepower Mercuries on it that goes about 90 miles an hour. It never ceases to scare me out of my wits when he drives. And he's having a great time. He's training with Cena's trainer a couple times a week. We just did that deal in Nashville for his last match that they're still waiting on the pay-per-view numbers, but the house show was tremendous. The merch sales were tremendous. He sold more tickets for that than he did when he had that legendary match with Steamboat in the same building 30 years ago. So that's kind of crazy.
Nuts.
And he's actually doing better than he ever did as a performer. He's got Ric Flair Woo Wings that we're working to spread throughout Florida. That because of my restaurant connections, I told him I'd help. He's got the pot, the Woo Drip, with the same guy that did Mike Tyson, who he met here actually. And he's doing Car Shield national commercials. So you know what? The guy's doing amazing, and he hasn't changed. Now he goes to bed a lot earlier, given his health concerns, and he's really not out partying, roaring like he used to. But in the day, John, I can't even tell you. I've seen them all, from Piper to Nate to Terry Funk to you name it, to rock and roll stars to professional athletes of every single sport. No one could take on the boys, I'm telling you. Rick, Knobs, Piper. I mean, the stories are just legendary and just tremendous times. The business has changed so much. But back then, those guys really lived their gimmick. They did.
And with him too, I think he's got a new Viagra. I forget what the name of it, but there's
He
like a
does. It's called Mount Everest.
yeah. There you go. Yep.
He just, no, he's something else. I'll tell you, John. It's amazing. It's amazing. He is his I guess it would be called the Q rating. Has got to be off the charts. I don't know what it is, but it's got to be. His recognizability factor here. They just asked me to give him to be the Grand Marshal of. We have a parade here called the Gasparilla Parade for a fictitious pirate that supposedly invaded Tampa 100 and some years ago, but it's just a gimmick parade. But it's probably the fourth or fifth largest in the country. Huge, 500,000 people crowding the downtown streets in Bay Shore, which is the longest uninterrupted sidewalk in the world, along the water there. And it's really a great event. If you get a chance, come on down. But they wanted me to get Rick to be the Grand Marshal, which he agreed to. Batista did it a couple years ago. And he's just having a great time here. it's like nothing I've ever seen. He's 73 years old. He's got the energy of a 20-year-old. Never seen anything like it.
Crazy. I mean, he really is the Nature Boy, but he is probably more popular than ever, which is insane to think of because of how popular he used to be. But man, it's crazy. The
Yeah,
Flair drip and the rap videos, him
yeah.
showing up at football games, doing the woo, everybody imitating him. He's more
John,
popular than ever.
he's truly iconic. One of his robes actually hangs in the Smithsonian Institute, Museum of
Really?
History. I mean, I'm sorry. He's he truly is an American treasure, an icon, and nothing ever ceases to amaze me. And he's such a good friend. He's got a heart of gold. He's one of the most generous guys you'll ever meet, and which I'm always on him about, trying to curb that somewhat. But just a great guy. And if you would have told me, 15-year-old me, you're gonna, be best friends with your hero, I'd be like, yeah, right, okay, But he's just a great guy, and I've had some of the best times of my life with him. I truly, truly have. And we've been there for each other, highs, lows. He's had, quite a few heartbreaking things occur in his life, and he's gotten through them. He's amazing, amazing. He should have been dead 7 years ago.
Like your boy Kevin Sullivan, my buddy too. He always says he's Dracula. Can't get rid of him.
Yeah, that would be the devil. Yes, Kevin is the best. One of the smartest men ever met in the business. Oh,
With WCW, like the second time around, did you like Bischoff and me like initially when you got there, or was there
yeah,
issues
very
there?
John, very charming guy. And I guess from an eyes on thing, and Rick would talk me up and Arn would talk me up. So Eric wanted me, and I had God, I want to say I worked Brad Armstrong. So how can you have a bad match with him?
Right.
Um, I had a good match coming in, so I think Eric probably thought my prowess was a little more than it really was. So he wanted me, gave me great money. He's very charming. Oh my God. When he wants to turn it on, he can turn it on with the best of them. Eric's a sharp businessman when it comes to that. And he's a nice guy, but you started to see the cracks, as the times were going great. I mean, for the first year, it was amazing. The crowds, the money, the house shows, the merch sales, everything was just ridiculous. It was a $300 million company. I think maybe 350. But then you started to see the cracks. If somebody didn't want to do a job, they'd go to the devil, Kevin, who was the booker by all rights. But then if they didn't like what Kevin said, then they'd go to Eric, and then they'd go or use their political connections. So it was just, you would literally see the number one show on cable drawing a 4.8 being rewritten on the fly. And because I traveled with Kevin and Arn and Rick, you would just see Kevin. Kevin had a couple breakdowns, one of them here in Tampa, one of them in Denver, Colorado. And he'll tell you, I mean, it just got to him, you know? He was, and all the ideas he had, everything he did to build the Dungeon of Doom to give Hogan, the opponents that he felt comfortable working with, and the ideas Kevin tried to have to bring young talent, and he'd have to mesh with Eric's ideas, and then Page, and I felt bad. I don't know how he got through his job the way he did. When you had 90 guys, somebody's got to do a job. But it just seemed like no matter what, what Kevin gave them, oh, okay. Then they try to swerve him and go around him, and see the poor guy rewrite a 2-hour script on the fly. That's a lot of pressure.
Was that just because everybody had too much power backstage or too much influence? Why do you
Only
think
one,
that was like that?
only one guy had the power, and rightfully so, because of what he brought with him, and that's Hulk. He had
Right.
creative control. I think Macho probably did too, but the other guys had friendships. And I'm not going to get into that, but top guys that had friendships, perhaps with Eric or perhaps with other people. And so they would use those friendships. And Kevin was always the one that was on the losing end of the stick, even though he knew what was right. Kevin's, this, John, you're friends with him.
Yep.
He's a brilliant man. When it comes to the wrestling business, he learned from Eddie Graham. He learned from Vince Sr. And just to ride in the car with Kevin Sullivan was some of the best education you could ever get. That was the best part, and I miss that so much about the business, is the rides in the car. And when you would just hear why he thought of this and why he did this, and amazing how smart that man is.
When you look at that, though, that is not good to have that type of backstage turmoil Like, is that where Bischoff maybe need to step in and really put his foot down? Because they say in WWF, like, oh, when Vince says it, like it's happening. You can kind of
Absolutely.
maybe talk him into it, but is that where kind of there was some, some issues maybe with Bischoff or maybe with even Hulk?
John, absolutely. Listen, with your show, I'm guessing you're the boss of your show. Perhaps you were Tom, but you're the boss of your show. What you say goes. A staff or somebody may have a good idea, maybe an advertiser. Hey, but maybe this, boom, boom, boom. But you're the final say. There's got to be one chief, and I'll use the Indian thing, but you can't have all chiefs and not enough Indians. And Kevin was supposedly the chief, answering to what's his name, Dr. Schiller, or Eric, then Dr. Schiller, but people would go around him. Hulk, I get, because he had creative control, no question. And, he was the mega star and enabled everybody else to make a living and enabled WCW to lead the ratings and then the big turn and everything else. But you just can't go around it I've literally seen, okay, this is going to be the finish better. And Kevin would give him the finish and then not to get into names, but, someone would have a problem with it and he'd go around Kevin and go to Eric, or go to Hulk, then either Eric or Hulk, brother, maybe we try to do something a little different. Then Kevin would have to come up with a whole other idea, and it's just, in WWE, and this, everything is written out weeks in advance. They have a clear idea where they're going to end up 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now. And WCW did too, but it would always change. And I would see those poor guys. Terry Taylor was there. Arn was on the committee for a while, off and on. And those guys would be under the most immense pressure just to have to redo that and to try to get everybody to get along. It was horrible. You couldn't have paid me, and I know what they made. You couldn't have paid me to take the jobs. Never.
It's just one of those things where it just seemed like on TV, it's like, oh, this is great, everything is going well, but behind the scenes, you always hear the turmoil stories of this.
Yeah.
Hall and Nash have their own clique. Obviously, Rick has his own clique. Hogan
Yeah.
has his own clique, but they all kind of vying for power and vying for control. Not really a good scenario if there's not one kind of guy stamping it, saying, "Nope, this is exactly what's going on."
Absolutely. And this has been repeated time and time and time again. You have the inmates running the prison.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you have somebody strong, like I never saw that happen when Ole was there. Now, Ole might not have been the best booker in the world or respected in that regard, but nobody talked back to Ole and said, "Oh, I have a problem with this." What he said was gospel. And I just they put Eric in a tough situation. Too many guys with creative control. Too many guys making $800,000 a year. It just. It was tough. It was an untenable situation, and I don't know how Kevin handled it as well as he did for as long as he did. But as you know, he had to take a break and go home. He was flipped. By the time it was all said and done, Kevin was flipped.
What did you think about the Hulkster? Did you get along with Hulk?
Great guy. Listen, he's a businessman. Hulk will tell you from day one, he's a businessman. And then the thing with Hulk and he and I have respect. I think he respects me because I'm a businessman too. Albeit not with myself like him. He was able to make a cottage industry with himself. Unreal. God bless him. But Hulk's a businessman. He'll tell you. He thought it was the guy who wins wasn't the guy who was the best worker and won the Luth Des Award every year. It's the guy who made the most money, and it's hard to disagree with that. Hulk revolutionized business, and he's a nice guy. He's had a lot of bad stuff happen to him too, and he's a lot more. And I see him here, quite a bit. He's out in Clearwater Beach, got a beautiful home there. But he's just a real spiritual guy, and he's been through a lot. And that's a tough man. He almost died this last one for shoulder surgery, got infected, and it was horrible. But he's got a beautiful new place called Hogan's Beach right there on Mandalay. Beautiful bar restaurant. And he's selling a ton of merch out of there and out of the Hogan store here in Clearwater, out in Orlando too. So, listen, it's hard to argue with him. He got creative control and he deserved it,
I was just down there a few months ago and
Oh, no
at the
way.
beach, yeah, at the beach shop, man, line going around the place because he was there signing.
Yeah,
Then I
yeah,
went down and I went to the bar, the Hogan's Hangout, and I
yeah.
got some Hogan Pilsner. So I was like, wow, this guy is like the king of friggin' Clearwater. I mean, he's the king of wrestling, but I mean, he's the king of Clearwater. Jeez.
Very, very smart man. He's there every Monday night doing the karaoke.
Yep.
He's gotten last. He told me Nick was going to come in and play drums. I think play there on Thursday or something, or DJ. I'm sorry, maybe it was play drums. But so Nick was coming in on Thursday, and Hulk's there every Monday leading the karaoke, and he'll have his friends come in. I've gone to Rick a few times, and Jimmy Hart will be there when he's in town. You know, and Hulk's living his best life. You know, he lives about 1.5 miles from Hogan's Hangout, and you know, he's right there on Clearwater Beach, gorgeous. You know, he's good. I think he's in a good place.
Did you like the Dungeon of Doom? Just to think about Hogan and think about you mentioned. Did you like that though? As far as like at that point, because it's such like a cheesy '80s gimmick, but I guess those are the guys he was comfortable working with.
There you go. No, I didn't think it was. You know, it was that '80s cartoon character. You know, like that. But again, Kevin. This is Kevin's brilliance. Kevin was giving Hulk the people he was comfortable working with, and then Hulk was more malleable in that term. You know, more workable. You know,
Right.
because Hulk was happy. Hulk knew that he wasn't going to get hurt. You know, and he's working with Tenta. He's working with his best friend at the time, Eddie
Yep.
Brutus.
Yep.
You know, and Kevin's bringing all these larger than life characters, and sure, it was comical, but Hulk was happy, and Hulk was making X amount per Nitro and X amount per pay. You know, he was the sacred lamb, whatever. You know, so it's all about making Hulkster happy, and the bottom line, the guy brought the ratings. So, you know, those were some lean times in 94, 95, and then 96 when they had him turn, forget it. I mean, it was crazy. But that was because, you know, Hulk, the biggest name in history, turning heel, Hall and Nash coming over from WWE, you know, and then all the other guys that came over. And eventually, like anything else, you know, you bloated it. Horace Hogan became a member of the NWO and,
Right.
you know, stuff like that. All they needed was put me in there, forget it, you know. So, just a little bit too much of everything, and that's how everything works out. You know, it's always going to run its course. And I think we probably could have stayed on top had the merger not happened. You know, unfortunately, Eric was at wit's end because he was burnt out. You know, he's trying to, you know, make the right business decisions, but again, he's trying to make everybody happy too, just like Kevin. You know, it goes downhill. So those guys did an amazing job, I thought, considering it was kind of like a one-man show. You know, Kevin was trying to book, and you know, Johnny's told you the stories. I don't have to tell you. I mean, I felt so bad for him. I mean, he was ashen. You know, sometimes he would just be ashen. He'd come up with a great finish and a great angle. It doesn't work for me, brother.
Right.
You know, and then you have to start
Yep.
over from scratch. I don't know how he did it. You know,
He
so
always says creative control, brother. Creative control. He always says that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And if they would just listen to Kevin, you know this, John. He is a genius. He has a genius mind for the business. And, you know, and again, he learned from some of the greatest minds, you know, Eddie Graham, Vince Sr., you know, and Kevin's like a sponge. He absorbs everything. You know, he's quiet, he listens, but he doesn't miss a thing. That mind's always turning. Very, very, very smart man. Real estate. He's done phenomenally well in real estate, you know, after his wrestling career is over. Kevin's a very, very savvy man and knows every sport, statistics and everything. He'll beat you in everything. And I thought I was a pretty big baseball buff. Oof, Kevin's the best.
Oh yeah, he knows his stuff. It's funny. He always said like it was it was tough sometimes dealing with Hogan, creative control. Trying to get certain things across. If he doesn't want to do certain things, he's
Yes,
not going to do it. But he always said he tells his daughter and stuff. Obviously when she was younger, when she would go to bed, thank God when you go to sleep
yes,
tonight that Hulk Hogan exists because
yes.
that's
He
why
said
we're
that.
living in this place. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
right. He said everybody should get on their hands and knees and say a prayer to God and thank Hulk Hogan for letting us live like this. And I agree. Hulk Hogan was end all be all, you know, and what he did for the business for WCW, it was lightning, boom. And I was there that night, and you could just see it, and it was amazing. Now there was other big players in there, Hall and Nash, and never discount Rey Mysterio and the lightweights and Juventud and those and Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko and those lightweight guys that would draw the ratings and really get the fans going, and then they'd see the big guys, the stars. But you can never ever discount the work rate that the smaller guys, lightweights, cruiserweights, and it was really a great collection of talent. WCW at the time had the greatest collection of talent, I think, in the history of the business. Guys like, and they weren't even being used. Bobby Eaton, one of the greatest workers ever. Arn Anderson, top 5 for me. Barry Windham, Ric Flair, Kurt Hennig. I mean, maybe a little bit past their prime, but still just tremendous workers. Macho. I mean, the list was just incredible. But again, that's a bloated payroll. That's a lot of money out there. The company went from, 350. I want to say it was valued at 350 or something, and Vince bought it for less than $3 million for intellectual property. It's unreal.
Insane. That's just insane, especially given the light of what we found out with Vince paying for other stuff. Recently it's like, wow, that's what you pay for WCW. Jesus.
That doesn't even cover a good weekend in Cancun. You're right, John.
And it's funny, like Hogan had said, like if he knew like that he could sell DVDs or whatever, he would have just bought it for $3 million, $4 million.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And then he would own the rights to it. Just crazy.
You know what, John? That's a great point. I'm surprised Hulkster didn't, because that's one shrewd, savvy businessman.
Yeah,
genius, absolute genius too, and absolute genius.
In terms of crazy.
They had brand and everything. Genius.
Absolutely. But it's crazy. Bischoff had a deal for $65 million with Fusion Media, but it had to stay on the programming. And they rather take the WWF deal because they don't have to be on the programming anymore, which is just, I mean,
they just
mind-boggling.
On there. When Vince, I'm sorry, when Ted merged, that was it. It was over. And it's sad because that ended a 30-year association with wrestling.
Yep.
Because Ted would always say, well, he told Rick, not me, of course. But he told Rick his granny loved wrestling and he loved wrestling, and it was cheap programming, and he'll always have wrestling as long as he has the Superstation. So unfortunately, but from the ashes of that come other things. It's giving AEW a chance to go up. Tony Khan's doing, a great job there, I think. And there'll be other ones that come up, more independents, where guys are getting more opportunity to work. Fandango called me the other night. He's with NWA. With Tyrus, I talked to both those guys. They were happy as heck. Billy Corgan, I guess, is a great owner. The schedule's light. They're able to be, there twice a month maybe, and they're able to schedule themselves to do independence. So financially, they're not missing any money that they were making in WWE, and they're picking their own schedule. They're happy as heck.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny with AEW, though. AOL Time Warner with WCW kind of, if you really look at me, they killed WCW. Yes. It looks like Discovery with this new deal is almost not killing AEW, but you're hearing rumors that the same thing could happen all over again.
Yeah, I heard that too. But I also heard Tony was getting a new deal.
I hope so. Yeah,
I do too. But I heard it was big money, like $135 million.
Wow.
And I like what Tony does. I don't know if you noticed this, but when Cody had that tremendous dog collar match with John, God rest his soul, they had Hammer there, and they were referencing his dog collar match with JYD, which of course was one of the most legendary, dog collar matches.
With Piper, yeah, with Piper.
Oh, with Piper, I apologize. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was nice because they had Hammer dressed up in a suit, and he stood up, took a little bow, and acknowledged fans, and that's how you should treat a legend like that. I love the way, Tony Khan has found a place for. He has DDP on all the time, but Tully Blanchard, and he just treats Jake the Snake. I love the way that he has reverence for the real legends of our sport, in the business. And I think that's awesome,
Yeah, he definitely respects the legends. Double A, Taz, I mean, all the guys, all the legendary guys he gives jobs to. Yeah, for sure.
And I love to see that, and I love to see him create jobs for the guys. He's running into some of the same problems though with the bloat. I saw.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, he lived at one of my rentals for years when he was in WWE. I'm sorry, Brian Cage. Brian's. I thought, hey man, are you hurt? I saw him at Rick's deal in Nashville, I said, man, are you okay? I haven't seen you on TV in a while, but again, because of the numbers, they start, stop, start, stop, and Brian's perfectly healthy. I thought he was injured, because I hadn't seen him in months on TV, and the kid looks amazing. So, AEW is starting to get in that number crunch too, where they just keep hiring talent, hiring talent, hiring talent.
Yep.
But I think they're starting another TV show. I heard.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
another one. Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Man, good. Well, good for them if they're going to do that. That's great.
Yeah. Listen, he's got to have 150 guys under contract. I mean,
Yes, at least. Yeah.
yeah. So, unfortunately, he's well backed. So as long as
Oh
he
yeah.
keeps getting the contracts, and the house shows are drawing, and I think his merch is doing really well too. So I'd love to see that.
Going back to WCW, why did you leave WCW? I guess it was somewhere around 99. It's kind of like 97. You didn't really wrestle much in 98, but you ended up leaving in 99. Was the contract up? Did you get released or what happened at the end?
Contract was up, and at that time, I just, I had other things going on here, and at that time, it just wasn't conducive. Everything was really, they had the Thunder thing going on, and it was really pretty fragmented then. And mind you, and I'm so flattered. Kevin was so good to me. Kevin and Macho came to Sushan 7th and offered me a job. There was a brief period there where Kevin was given the book again in '99. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yes. Yep.
It didn't last long because it was just, again, he was literally under assault on everywhere you could turn. But they turned back to Kevin again, maybe to try to recapture the glory, whatever. And he offered me a job again, but I had some other issues, and I'll be candid about that. I didn't think would fare well for the company for me to go back to.
Ah, okay. Personal issues?
Um, legal,
Oh, okay.
legal, not personal. I've never been a substance guy. Never tried any. Never been a painkiller guy. Not even really a drinker. But some relationships that I had in the past, and growing up in Tampa, and Tampa has a long storied history. Came back to bite me, and some poor decisions on my part, 100% my part, and paid dearly for it, but learned a great lesson.
So you
So
almost came back then after that.
I had the opportunity to, yeah. And Rick and Arn at the time were in WWE. And Rick had said, "Oh, Joe, let's just get you a job here." Blah, 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 blah. I don't know work rate, whether I could have cut it, to be quite honest. But I said, Rick, I can't because I have this impending issues coming up here that I had to deal with. But I really appreciated them, and I really appreciated Macho and Kevin coming to see me.
Were you surprised? Obviously, you're gone at this point. Were you surprised though? We were kind of joking around about Vince buying WCW. Were you just like surprised that it was over just like that? Because
Yeah,
you guys were number one at one point. I mean, people
yeah,
always say 83 weeks. It was more like 2 years. It was like 104 weeks, really.
you're right. Yeah, I think anybody that spent any appreciable length of time there, as you've had what 1,000 episodes or 600 episodes you've done.
Oh yeah,
Okay, so
probably
you
even
put it.
more than that if I add them all up. But I lost count, so I try to add them up. But yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, well, you've created history. You've created, as you say, an empire there. So when you've put something together that was your baby and it was your dream and it was your passion and you love what you do, and for it to end so suddenly like that, you're just kind of like, wow, you just can't imagine it happening. I can remember being hired on the 13th floor. I believe it was at North Tower. I can't recall, but and just wishing maybe that I didn't take it as much for granted in those special times. Having lunch with Gordon Soley and him drinking 5 martinis in the span of lunch, and just all the special times that I had there, and the great people that I met, and the friendships that I was able to accrue, and yeah, and then it's gone. You just can't imagine. It was a monolith. It was a $400 million company, and through poor decisions, merger, all the other things just conspired against it. You never imagine it.
crazy. Just think about how great they were. I mean, they saved wrestling. If you think about it, with Hogan going there, it was doing good, but WWF sucked. Really, I mean,
But
they
without
had
John,
their
without a question, they had Vince on the ropes.
yeah, yep.
I
Not that
mean,
they sucked,
literally,
they're totally, but they were not great. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, and you knock Eric, that's what I tell everybody. Hey, listen, knock these guys all you want. They changed the business,
yep,
the whole business. Eric, Hulk, Kevin, everybody that was the top guy there and involved in the booking committee and then the executive decisions, they changed the whole business. Unreal. So, and yes, it was on top for 2 years, but you would see the cracks just because I was privy to it because I traveled with those guys. I stayed with those guys. Unfortunately, I was with Kevin, here in Tampa and in Denver, Colorado, and just, you know what I'm talking about.
yep.
And it broke my heart because he was somebody who he's given his life to that business and loves the business, really does. And was a good friend to me and would mentor me and try to help me any way that he could, without being deferential or whatever. But yeah, it was just sad to see, him have to go through that. Because he took it very deeply, all the pressures and yeah, it was just bad. It really was. Because everybody worked so hard to get there. I can remember we'd get in the car. What was the ratings? What was the ratings? They'd all want to know the ratings. Boom, they'd find out. First it was a 2.8, then it was 2.9. I remember when it first broke 3 the first time. And everybody was just excited. It was that camaraderie, like a real team, like a football team climbing the ratings, and it was just really a great time. Everybody's making money and having fun, and the crowds were unreal. It was like I always say the Beatles, but that's how it was almost. Travel to these college stadiums and the youth that were so into the show and getting everybody's mannerisms and catchphrases. Oh, it was amazing. It really was amazing. And like I said, I'm just honored that I was able to even be there. So
Great times from WCW for sure. But as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish. Give me just some of your favorite matches or maybe favorite opponents. Just a bunch of guys that you just love working with.
Brad Armstrong, amazing. My God. Rock and Roll Express, getting a team with them, amazing. Watching Ricky Morton the way he sold and just watching Ricky Steamboat. I mean, you just sit there and like, is he really doing that? It's just those guys were so good and so smooth. It was just amazing. And being fortunate enough to wrestle the Horsemen. Oh, and I remember, circling around the ring, let's see if you're all they say, kid. And I was just like, oh, God, I'm going to wrestle Ric Flair. I wrestled Arn for the TV title, broke his finger on a kick. To this day, never lets me hear the end of that. But Chief, worst match I ever had in my life. And Arn, maybe the funniest man in the history of the business.
Yeah, he's hilarious. Yep.
Oh my God, John. I can't even tell you. But just being with those guys, John. Imagine, you're Bob Euchre or whoever yours, Kurt Gowdy, whoever your hero may be in broadcasting, it made you want to pick up a microphone. And them, like I said, I shared Christmas with them, 4 or 5 Christmases, very special. Brings tears to my eyes. Making me a part of their family. I just spent the whole night. I just sat backstage and watched the matches with Arn's wife, Erin, and caught up with her, and it was so nice. She's such a wonderful person, and to me, that's the things. And getting to know a guy like Ricky Steamboat, literally one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. Just unbelievable, man. Those are the things I take from it. I listen. I was lucky to be there. Okay, and whether or not I should have done better, that's conjecture. But Ricky Steamboat said the nicest thing to me, and I always appreciate this and actually treasure it. He said, "Joe, it's a shame." He goes, "You weren't a Hall of Famer in the ring, but you're a Hall of Famer in life," and that means the world to me, coming from a guy like him.
Wow,
So
nice.
the friendships that I've accrued and made, and the respect that I get, um, as a job guy, as maybe a glorified job guy who's on contract, but that means a lot to me. And I've always just treated people the way I want to be treated. And, I've been able to just have a lot of great friends in the business, even the younger guys now that, rented my properties, and I gave some guidance to and try to help out here in Florida, from Sheamus to Drew McIntyre to, Kofi and Big E and all the guys, and Fandango's, still one of my very, very dearest friends on earth. So that's the thing about the business. You just meet so many great guys and you share so many good times with them. And those are the memories you'll always have.
Man, like you just think about it, two separate contracts for WCW. So you could say, you were a job guy, or whatever, but still you had contracts working for, the biggest company at one point in the world.
John, listen, I'm not blowing my own horn, but Kevin would tell me, kid, you're #1 draft pick. You're a big, you're good looking kid. The hair, the look, blah blah blah. And it was just me. I should have taken it upon myself. The way Paige did. And Paige was such a great guy. And Paige and I knew each other here in Florida. And he would tell me, come to the power plant, Chief. The way he would film himself and everything. And 9 out of 10 times, Arn or the devil would call and say, Chief, come pick us up. You're on the road with us. Guys, I got to be at the power. Chief, get down here, Chief. Come get us. We'll be ready in 20 minutes. Okay. Now that's a cop out, but I still should have been, more attuned to it, and put 150% into that, and not spread myself so thin, without a question. That would be my one great lament if I had one. Everything works out great. I'm the luckiest guy on earth, John. I thank God, being remembered by guys like you and having me a show. I'm flattered, truly. But my one great lament would have been, man, maybe I should have put more into it, in terms of effort. But I guess the lure of running around with the Horsemen with Nature Boy was too much, and Barry Windham and all those guys, because I had some of the best times of my life. Never forget them.
So what are you up to today? You got you got all your businesses going on. You still got
John,
real estate.
John, I'm the luckiest man on earth. I got a beautiful, for lack of a better term, wife with a 12-year-old daughter. I've got the best friends in the world. I'm here, and maybe you can see in the background, beautiful Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah,
on the water here, right by the causeway there. I've got a funding company where we do pre-settlement funding, where we advance funds to clients that have been involved in auto accidents. I've been able to help people save their homes, their cars. My rates are a flat 50% rate. I don't compound it like some of the other companies, which sounds high, I know, but they do it 68% a year compounded. So that, believe me, that's offensive. So that business has just boomed, taken off like you couldn't imagine, because obviously the personal injury business is big in Florida. We're one of 13 states that are PIP states, personal injury protection. I did well in real estate because fortunately I've got a very dear friend of mine, Bonifacio Tejedor, who's a realtor, and would get on me before I had my daughter. I'd be at the casino, Hard Rock here, playing and get my brains kicked in. And he would just say, are you a masochist? Listen, buy real estate, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, yeah, a realtor tell me to buy real estate. But I finally listened to him. My first place was a 3-3 beach condo I still own in Reddington. Flair stayed there when he went to rehab. And Haku just actually stayed there this past weekend, his family. We had a great time.
wow.
And if you ever come down here, call me up. You're welcome to stay, brother.
Awesome. Thank you.
But that was my first one, quadrupled up on that one. And not that I'm smart, but I listen to people that are smarter than me. Surround yourself with smart people and just listen. The rental properties I have here in West Tampa, the areas that I grew up in, going to high school at Jefferson, they've quadrupled in price and they're all rented. So, how can you mess up that? So I've been very, very blessed, just having such good friends and for once being smart enough to listen, even though I didn't listen to Arn or Scott Hall, who was one of the best guys ever too. Kid, just get in shape, lose the derby, he would always tell me. So I guess I did listen later in life in some aspects, and it turned out well for me. Like I said, I think God, or whatever you may believe in, it all works out for the best. And I've been truly, truly blessed. But, before I got in the wrestling business, I was what you would consider over. I worked at all the, top bars here, bouncing, security at the concerts and everything. So, I think that's why I didn't really take wrestling that. You know what I mean? I was always just a very lucky guy. You know, I played football in high school, played football in college. You know, so my life's always been very, very fortuitous. Um, but that would be my one great lament, that I didn't reach potential that other people saw in me. They, you know, hired me twice at, yes, one of the biggest companies in the world of what I did. But Eric would tell me all the time, kid, you got $1 million look. Kids, just get abs. Like, yeah, I'm trying, Eric. I mean, John, I had lipo done, right? Very dear friend of mine in town, Dan Diaco, great plastic surgeon, did lipo on me. I thought that gave me carte blanche. I went back to him after they took the bandages off and everything. He goes, Joe, I took 12 pounds of fat off of you. He goes, you've gained 16. How did you do that? I'm like, oh, damn, shit, I don't know, you know? So some things aren't meant to be. And this
Yep.
Indian wasn't meant to have abs. So, but you know what, John? Just like I said, thank you for having me on your show. Being remembered by you, it's truly flattering, and being able to share, you know, my memories of a great time. I had a great time. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the time. I appreciate it. Great interview. Thank you again.
And everybody out there, this is a heck of a show, and I'll always be loyal to it. Thanks so much, John.